Are you wondering if Linux is better than Windows? Don't wonder. Linux is better than Windows. If you are not a powerful user, it might seem that Windows OS is a better or easier choice when compared to Linux. In other case, if you are not enjoying using a Linux distro, then Windows would be your obvious choice. However, in reality, we tend to experience some different, which lets us jump on the conclusion where Linux gets the edge over Windows OS. Advantage of Linux over Windows. In this video, we will take a look at 11 points of compelling reason why Linux is better than Windows. Open source nature. What is it like when you buy a car but you can't see what's under the hood? Similar is the case with when you are use a Windows power system. You can't see anything under the power system. However, in contrast, Linux is completely an open source project. You can have a look at the source code of Linux OS, which is a plus. I know most people don't care about this openness of Linux, but to me, this is the most important feature of using GNU Linux. Second point, Square. Let's face it, Windows OS is a vulnerable in different type of attacks or hacks. However, in Linux is not as vulnerable as Windows. It sure isn't invaluable, but it is a lot more secure, although that's a no rocket science in it. It is just the way Linux works that makes it a secure operating system. Overall, the process of package management, the concept of repositories, and couple more features makes it possible for Linux to be more secure than Windows. When you have Windows installed, you need to download or purchase an antivirus program to keep your computer safe from hackers and malware. However, in Linux does not require the use of such antivirus program. Of course, a couple of software tools still exist to help you keep your system free from threats, but it is often unnecessary when you have a Linux system. Being square by nature world make things easier for you and save money as well because you will not have to get a premium antivirus software. Third point, can revive older computers. As the operating system evolve, so do the hardware requirement increase exponentially. For instance, if you purchase a genuine copy of Windows 10, you will have to meet the minimum hardware requirements to run it successfully, and you can't run it on just about any low-end system. Nevertheless, with Linux, you could even utilize one of your oldest computer system to achieve a task. However, that does not mean that every Linux distribution would work with 256 MB of RAM coupled with an outdated processor. However, there are problems which you can install on such low-end system as well as such a puppy Linux. So being an efficient OS, Linux distribution could be fitted to a range of systems, low end or high end. In contrast, Windows operating system has a higher hardware requirement. Overall, even if you compare a high-end Linux system and high-end Windows power system, the Linux distribution would take the edge. Will that the reason most of the servers across the world prefer to run on Linux than on a Windows hosting environment. Fourth, perfect for programmers. Linux supports almost all the major programming languages: Python, C, C++, Java, Perl, Ruby, and etc. Moreover, it offers a vast range of applications useful for programming purpose. The Linux terminal is superior to use overall Windows command line for developers. You would find many libraries developed natively for Linux. Also, a lot of programmers point out that the package manager on Linux help them get things done easily. Interestingly, the ability of base scripting is also one of the most compelling reasons why programmers prefer using Linux OS. Linux also brings the native support of SSH, which would help you manage your server quickly. You could include things like apt-get commands, which further makes Linux one of the most popular choice of the programmers. Fifth, software updates. Microsoft pushes a software update when it receives a set of problems or if something major needs to be fixed. On the other hand, you would observe a software update to address a little problem. So, with Linux, you will notice more updates to fix the problems you might be facing. You will not encounter a large number of software updates, but you will also observe much faster software updates. 6. Customization. One major advantage of using Linux instead of Windows is customization. If you like tweaking your system's look, Linux is just perfect for you. Apart from installing themes, you have icon ton of beautiful icon themes in addition so that you can use Conky to display system information on the desktop in the coolest way possible. Needless to say that you can do a lot around wallpapers in Linux. 7. Variety of distribution. There are no flavor of Windows. Yes, you may have different plans and packages which differ in licensing terms, the period of activation, package feature and price. In contrast, you will find ton of Linux distribution catered for a different set of needs. So you can choose to install any of the available Linux distro according to your requirement. For example, there are Linux distributions for hackers. There are Linux distributions for programmers. There are Linux distributions for extremely old computer. There is a Linux for everyone. 8. Free to use. Linux is accessible to the public for free. However, that is not the case with Windows. You will not have to pay 100 or 250 USD to get your hands on a genuine copy of a Linux distro such as Ubuntu Fedora. So it is entirely free. If something is free but useful, it always the best thing than one could expect with the money you have saved. You can consider enhancing your system just saying you can go through Starbucks as well. 9. Better community support. You do not need to hire an expert to solve a problems you are facing on your Linux system. You just need to search for a similar thread on the web for a solution or a post a thread to let others solve the problem. Within minutes of posting a thread on any of the Linux forums, you may expect a really along with a detailed solution. Such would finally help resolve your problem at no cost. There are a lot of active Linux users who are always ready to respond to a relevant thread one might have created. The number of community users active on such forums is more than the number of active members on any Windows focused forum. However, the community response might vary depending on Linux distribution being used. 10. Reliability. Windows as we know it becomes sluggish day after day. You will want to reinstall Windows after a while when you encounter crashes or slowdowns on your system. If you are using Linux, you will not have to worry about reinstalling it just to experience a faster and smoother system. Linux helps your system run smooth for a long period, in fact much longer. Also, with Windows, you will have to adapt to a habit where you keep on rebooting the system for just about everything. If you just install software, then reboot. If you recently uninstalled software, then reboot. If you are installed a Windows update, then you should reboot. If the system seems to slow down, then reboot. However, in the case of Linux, you will not have to reboot for the situation mentioned above. You can comfortably continue with your work and Linux will not bother you. Another fact that proves Linux to be reliable are the web server. You could observe that most of the internet giants like Google and Facebook run on Linux. Even almost all the supercomputers run on Linux. So why isn't Windows preferred over Linux? It is because Linux is a far more reliable than Windows OS. Period. 11. Privacy. Microsoft certainly tries to anonymize the data collected from every user. However, it does not look convincing. The Microsoft latest Windows 10 it has already received an enormous amount of criticism of how it collects data, what it should collect and what it should not. If you have ever used Windows 10, you could only head into the privacy setting to know that everything is enabled by default. Even if you opt out to send Microsoft information about your data, it is still being collected. Of course, Microsoft will not bother revealing it officially with a press statement, but it surely does. So, you would need to set of tools to disable the spying modules of Windows. In contrast, Linux would be the perfect solution for privacy buff. First of all, Linux distribution do not collect much data or none. Moreover, you will not be needing additional tools for protecting your privacy. Do you also think Linux is better than Windows? Not. Now that you know the advantage of using Linux instead of Windows, what do you think? If you are still going to keep using Windows as your primary OS, what reason could you think of choosing it over Linux? If you have already made the switch and using Linux, what more benefits do you observe? Thank you very much.